One of the new power programs in Big 12 basketball should be lining up and thanking the Baylor Bears.
You are Locked On Baylor, your daily podcast on the Baylor Bears. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello there, Bears fans. Welcome to another episode of Locked On Baylor, presented by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. I'm your host, Cam Stuart of ESPN Central Texas and The Cam Show on Rogue Media Sports Network. Appreciate you guys making it your first listen today and every day. We're getting basketball heavy in this episode. Texas Tech is going to be one of the best teams in the country next year, and they can thank Baylor for that. For a few different reasons. We'll go over why. Plus, Scott Drew, don't forget about me now. He is out there spending huge money in the transfer portal. The figures are astonishing to me how Baylor is keeping up with the Joneses like Kentucky and St. John's. Plus, we will get you an update from Arlington, Baylor, and Oklahoma State in Game 1 of the Big 12 tournament. Boy, it's good to be back. We'll have all that and more on this episode of Locked On Baylor. Let's start with Texas Tech. Tech is going to be one of the best basketball teams in America next year. And even with what Houston's done the last two seasons in the Big 12 and what they've done extended the last half decade here, and going to two Final Fours, making a national championship game last year, you could argue Tech is going to be the favorite. Bringing back the Big 12 Player of the Year in JT Toppin, and they have locked down one of the best coaches in all of college basketball. I would say one of the best young coaches. I still think he's young. He certainly looks young at 48, but he is one of the best coaches in college basketball. Grant McCasland gets locked down through the 2030-31 season with $5 million annually, $31.5 million over the extent of the contract. Ooh. We don't know what Scott Drew's paid because it's a private school. I don't imagine it's that far off from this number. But when you see what McCasland's done in 2 years at Tech, which wasn't a total dumpster fire when he took it over, but was not in a great place from where they were a few years before, that's going to be worth every penny. I don't mean to pump up Tech's tires too much, but I'm a huge Grant McCasland fan. And when you look at the rise of the second rise kind of this program over the last few seasons, and you look where they're going to be in 25, 26 after making the Elite Eight, couple of shots away from the Final Four a few months ago, Tech only has Baylor to thank for this. Yeah, I'm saying it. Because they have their most talented coach probably since Bobby Knight. Chris Beard was pretty good in there too, got them to a championship game. But the future is so bright under Grant McCasland. They've actually locked him down, which they couldn't do with Chris Beard. And he's winning more than Bobby Knight did at Tech. And it's thanks in large part to Baylor. McCasland's a Baylor guy, Matt Mosley fraternity brother, but also an assistant at Scott Drew. He was coaching JUCO before that. Now, granted, he was winning national championships out at Midland College, go Chaps, but he was on that Baylor staff in the 2010s that really gave him that chance in Division I. Obviously, he was great at North Texas, got them an NIT championship, and now here he is at Tech. And if Baylor had not been able to retain Scott Drew when Kentucky came calling back in April of 24, 13 months ago, this would have been their guy. Grant McCasland, 1,000% would have been their guy. And I know there are Tech fans watching and listening, and I appreciate that, but they're on the keyboards right now in the comment section saying, why would Grant McCasland go to Baylor? Why would he do that? It's a downgrade. It's a lateral move at best. Trust me, Baylor would have pulled out all the stops to get McCasland in Waco last year. He's an alum. He has coached there before, and they would have been able, as I said with the Scott Drew contract, they would have been able to put up this kind of money. Tech has bonkers money in that athletic department. This is a heck of a paycheck that he's getting. But to replace Scott Drew at Baylor, he absolutely would have gotten this kind of money, and it would have been very, very tough for him to turn down. So Scott Drew gives him the chance in Division I. He kind of takes him under his wing. They're great friends. And with Scott Drew staying and not going to a place like Kentucky, that absolutely saved Texas Tech when it comes to Grant McCasland. And I think there is some bitterness between Tech basketball and Baylor, more so than just the regular bitterness that I think Tech fans have for Baylor. Because obviously in 2019, it looked like Tech was going to be that next team in the Big 12, right? Kansas and then Texas Tech. And they really banked on that. They shared the conference title that year in the regular season in 2019, shared it with Kansas State, which is weird for how much they fell off right after that. And then after the next season, Chris Beard's gone, and Baylor 2 years later, I guess, 21. Chris Beard is gone, and Baylor wins a national championship. And all of a sudden, Tech's sitting there like, how did this all go wrong? We're replacing an assistant who's 60 some odd years old, who's never coached at this level, and Baylor's out there winning national championships. How does this happen? We lost our best coach ever to UT, and Baylor's cutting down the nets. One shining moment. I think they were really pissed about that, like really PO'd about that. They were like, man, how did they beat? We had Mike Leach for so many years, and yet they beat us to the punch, winning Big 12 championships in football. And now they're going to do it in basketball too. And I think Texas Tech saw that in Baylor, and obviously with their own run in 2019, and said, you know what? We can really compete in this sport, which is something that wasn't an option for Texas Tech or for Baylor or for TCU for a long time, right? They weren't putting anything into basketball. They felt there was just no hope in that. And then Tech gets to the Final Four. They play for the national championship. They see Baylor win the whole dang thing. They see, Houston and what they did in the American, and then eventually, obviously, in the Big 12. And they say, you know what? We can do this too. We've just got to find our Scott Drew. Chris Beard was not our Scott Drew. Mark Adams certainly was not our Scott Drew. On the court and off the court for both those guys were not Scott Drew. Grant McCasland is that. And look, I'm not here to say, oh, darn, I wish Scott had left for Kentucky so we could have got Grant. Not the case. Very happy to have Scott Drew there and his national championship ring. But I really wish Grant could have gone somewhere else. Could he have gone to the Big Ten for us? I don't even care if he's coaching UT or A&M in the SEC. Just don't have to face us twice a year, most years. But that is the case. He is locked down at Tech. And who knows? He's only a few years younger than Scott. But, at that time, 2030 or so, Scott Drew might be looking to hang him up at that point. And Grant McCasland could have one heck of a homecoming if you're into that kind of thing. But Tech is about to see a pretty good stretch of basketball here. I hate to say it, but they are, and they need to thank Baylor for that. Let me know how stupid you think I am down in the comment section below. Be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel. We are hard on the road towards 4,000 subscribers, and we need your help getting there. We're coming to you every weekday on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. Speaking of Big 12 basketball, let's look at it from the Baylor side, shall we? Because they have had one heck of an offseason, and there are some eye-popping numbers that I didn't even think were possible for this Baylor program. And I think a lot of you didn't think so either. Let's talk about those numbers next on Locked On Baylor. But first, a message from our friends over at FanDuel. Guys, the NBA playoffs are already here, full swing, conference finals, every night delivering highlight-worthy performances, those major momentum shifts, and the can't-miss moments. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in on the action. And FanDuel makes it so easy to stay in the game, so easy I can do it, okay? Before tip-off and during the game. Player props, performance trends, same-game parlays, fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. How about this? How could a $200 in bonus bets add to the excitement of your first $5 bet hits? You think that's pretty good? I think that's pretty good. And look, you're a smart guy, gal. If you've got a read on who's heating up, why not back it up? Put your money where your mouth is with the same game parlay. So many options. And if you're new to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you're going to get $200 in bonus bets. I wasn't lying about that. Let's do that again. Place your first $5 bet, win it because you're smart, and you'll get $200 in bonus bets. That equals more money. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, enough about Tech basketball. Let's get to Baylor basketball. We've already talked about how miraculous this offseason has been for Scott Drew, right? And I don't throw that word around lightly, especially at a good Christian university like Baylor, and especially with the Baylor basketball program, where we have seen miracles happen in this program. One offseason roster turnaround usually doesn't fit the miraculous category, but this one feels like it does, because you had nothing. And there were some cynical Baylor fans, and I can't even really blame them for this, by the way. There were some cynical Baylor fans saying in this offseason that, this might be the end of kind of the glory days for this program. And look, the jury's still out on that. I mean, I don't think they're winning the Big 12 championship this year or anything. And so maybe this does go real sideways. But I think there was a lot of chatter out there of, oof, has Scott Drew lost his way? Who wants to play for this program anymore? Guys just staying for 1 year. It's all NIL. It's all transfer portal. It's just not the program that we know, and that program that hung a national championship banner. And I got to say, not to complain too much, but it sucks that NIL and transfer portal kind of came at the time that it did, because maybe it did halt Baylor's growth at the national level, because they did go so hard in transfer portal over the next couple of seasons, and it's led to nothing but second round exits every year since 2021. But Scott Drew needed to go and replace an entire roster this year, and because of that Kentucky interest last year, he had money in his pocket to do it. And Evan Miyakawa, Baylor guy, put out a great graphic this week on Twitter about the money that these teams are spending in the offseason. Now, we know Baylor spent money in the past, right? But I think this number is going to surprise a lot of you, because it certainly surprised me. We're talking about getting into revenue sharing soon. Baylor football is close to a college football playoff spot with all the guys they've got returning. And Baylor basketball, where the interest isn't so great within the donors and within the greater Baylor fan base anyway, probably takes a bit of a back seat after a year like they had last year. And yet, Evan Miyakawa tweets out, here are the college basketball programs that are estimated to have spent the most NIL money on incoming transfers this season. And a lot of these won't surprise you. Indiana, $10 million, new coach. USC, Eric Musselman, disappointing year, $10 million, somewhat new coach. Iowa, new coach, $9 million. Michigan, somewhat new coach, $9 million. Kentucky, $8.8 million. St. John's, former Kentucky coach Rick Pitino, $8.5 million. And then there's Baylor at $8.1 million. And if you're keeping score at home, that is the most in the Big 12. Now, that doesn't mean they've assembled the best roster, because they had the most roster spots to fill in the Big 12. Them in West Virginia, Kansas State had to replace a couple, but they were out there spending the money. And there wasn't any kind of Jeremy Roach. There wasn't any kind of Norchad Omier. These all ACC guys who had played in the Final Four, who were household names, who had played a lot of games. There wasn't those guys. We're talking about Michael Ratai and Obi Agbem and J.J. White and Jocelyn Bodo, Caden Powell from Rice, the Waco kid. I guess Cameron Carr would fall into that. Someone they picked up midseason last year was a walk-on to practice with the team last year. That's a lot of dough being shelled out for a school like Baylor. And if you look at the rest of the teams ahead of them, there is no school like Baylor ahead of them, right? Indiana, USC, I'll count USC in here, even though they're a private school. Indiana, USC, Iowa, Michigan, Kentucky are all, for all intents and purposes, major state schools. USC's private, but they got a huge endowment. St. John's, is comparable to Baylor in that they're smaller, they're a private school, they have a Christian affiliation, but they don't have a football program. So they don't have any of that money tied into football. And then behind them, Miami, Virginia, and A&M. Baylor's outspending A&M in roster development and getting players in the door. There is nobody on this top 10 list that is like Baylor, that is small, private, and has a football program that competes at the Power 4 level. None of them are like that. And so that really shows a commitment to a real financial commitment to keeping a top-tier basketball team on the floor. And I can't lie to you guys, I'm stunned by that. I'm happy, I'm pleasantly surprised, but I'm surprised by it. Now, all kinds of rumors last year with Scott Drew with the Kentucky attention saying, hey, what I'm going to need to succeed here at Baylor, not holding them over a barrel, but saying what I'm going to need to succeed at Baylor is a blank check for NIL and getting these kids in the portal. Like that's what it's going to take to win year in, year out. Yet, of course, what you don't see on that list might change with Boogie Fland, but you don't see Florida on that list, defending national champions. You don't see Houston on that list. You don't see UConn on that list. You don't see Duke on that list. These are teams trying to get back, right? Indiana, USC, trying to get there for the first time. Iowa, trying to get there for the first time. Michigan, Kentucky, Miami, St. John's, UVA, A&M. They're all trying to get back, and that's where Baylor's at right now. But make no mistake about it, that Kentucky interest last year had to have spurned on a big Baylor spending spree for the second year in a row. And now they're up there with the likes of Kentucky spending that kind of money. Is that ironic? Is that coincidental? One of those two things. But when I know it's there, not all of these situations are created equal. And again, this list does not equate to the top 10 teams in the country. The best of these teams last year by far was St. John's, and Kentucky was pretty good too. And Michigan was good. But when you're up there saying, that as a basketball program with a big time football program right now, but as a men's basketball program, we're spending as much as Kentucky. We're committing as much as Kentucky to make this roster better. That's huge news. Now, we don't have the revenue sharing yet, and we don't have that ruling yet, which could change everything in terms of how Baylor, siphons money off to men's basketball. But that is a huge sign of intent. Again, doesn't mean they're going to be winning the Big 12 championship or even making the NCAA tournament this year. Who knows? This is a ragtag group put together. But that kind of money shows we're committed to it. That's why we have a top 20 transfer class in here. And it shows that hopefully, Baylor is not going away anytime soon, like they looked like they were going to do this past year. But that is a big-time financial commitment from this university to say, we still care about men's basketball. We got the shiny new arena. We've got a national championship banner, and we're going to commit to stay in that stratosphere. And we're going to spend like Indiana and Kentucky do, two of the blue blood programs who are just going to send endless money to the basketball team, right? Even though Indiana had a CFP football team last year, they're gonna send a bunch of money there. So I know it doesn't equate to wins, but to me, that's a really good thing and a really positive sign for Baylor basketball. But let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. Does this mean anything to you? Am I reading too much into this? I see Baylor up there with these big-time programs and big-time state school money programs that should be kind of that next wave in the NIL era, and they are keeping up financially. They're spending Kentucky money without the Kentucky pressure. So let me know what you think in the comment section below. Be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel. We are on our way towards 4,000 subscribers. We need your help. Like the video and subscribe to the channel if you love Scott Drew and you love that they're spending as much money as Kentucky. We're bringing it to you 5 days a week on YouTube, and then, of course, wherever you get your podcasts. Coming up, Locked On Baylor's not done. We'll send you out to Arlington, Globe Life Field. What happened in that Baylor Oklahoma State game in game 1 of the Big 12 tournament. A lot of craziness, I'll tell you that much. That is coming up next on Locked on Baylor. Well, they blew it and they got screwed. Both can be true. Okay, so the ball goes through Tyreek Kemp's legs, one of the best defensive shortstops, one of the best shortstops, period, in all of college baseball. That's not supposed to happen. But Baylor very much should have been out of that inning already in the 7th. This was with nobody out or one out. There's a clear swing and a miss for strike 3. Ball goes to the backstop. And the OSU hitter's kind of standing there trying desperately to be like, oh, it's foul ball. Look, it's off my bat. And ump is not having it. Strike 3, he's out. And instead, the ump's conference, and they say it's a foul ball. Every replay shows it's not. And even with the audio, just the audio, you can tell it hits the glove and then it hits the backstop. I can't believe a home plate umpire sitting right there doing a Big 12 conference championship game can't tell that, or can tell that and then brings his buddies together and someone says, no, it's got to be a foul. Like, how is the home plate umpire being overruled there? That doesn't make any sense to me. So Oklahoma State wins it 4-3. Baylor baseball's season is over. Didn't have, it was a pipe dream, I would say, to get to the NCAA tournament. You would have had to win this tournament, but that's the way it ends. That sucks, man. And Mitch Thompson was heated after that game. You could tell. And it probably wasn't just because of the call. Because, again, Baylor walks the next guy, or walks that guy who should have struck out. And then they should have had a runner thrown out at second. But because it was ball 4, even though that guy shouldn't have been out at the plate, that takes 2 outs off the board. The guy who steals the base scores on a routine ground ball that goes right through Kemp's legs. So they blow it, but also they were completely hosed in that game. Total ump show. And it does suck that it goes through Kemp's legs because he's been so good this year. And earlier in the game, they were interviewing Mitch during one of those, inning breaks. And he said, in my 35 years of coaching baseball, I've never seen a shortstop make this many great plays as Tyreek Kemp has done this year. And Mitch Thompson has seen a lot of baseball. Just a total rip your heart out kind of game up in Arlington, man. I mean, just there was no excuse for it. The ump had it called. He had it called correctly. I don't know what his buddies said to him or what Matt Holliday's brother said to him, but come on, man. How do you miss that? And again, the benefit of replay is great, and you can't review that, I guess, but we get to see the replay. We get to see that it clearly does not change its trajectory off the bat. But again, the ump is right there. He's right there. And you can hear it. You can hear it when it hits an aluminum bat. Wood on a foul tip, that's a little bit different. On aluminum, no, you can hear it. Ding. No such thing. Off the catcher's glove, off the backstop, that's it. And then Gabe Craig comes in, does what you're supposed to do. Gets a strikeout, gets a ground ball. It just goes through Kemp's legs. And all of a sudden, the Bears go down 4-3, and they have 6 outs left. But they were up 2-1, then 3-1 in this game. They obviously did blow it on top of that, but one umpire's call completely changes the trajectory of this game. And the Bears continue to lose in Arlington. It's about time Oklahoma State beat Baylor in a championship game in Arlington. Speaking of which, I might get some hate for this, but I've thought about it. I'm pretty glad they're going to Arizona next year for the Big 12 tournament. Like, Globe Life Field sucks. I don't even want to call it a ballpark. I call me old school, call me boomer. I just don't love indoor baseball stadiums. I totally get why you have to have it. I totally understand that. I lived in Texas for a long time. I get it. But like today in this game, these are, Baylor's nearby. Oklahoma State's nearby, and they're the defending champs in this tournament, and it's cavernous. You're playing it in an airplane hangar. There's a couple thousand people there, maybe. It doesn't have the atmosphere that the other conference tournaments have, which are played in, minor league ballparks. And it just stinks. You look out, and from all the views of the TV angles, outside of right behind home plate, it looks like there's nobody there. And it doesn't help for me that Baylor doesn't play well there. But this is going to actually be a good move to play it outside in Arizona. Spring training park, I think, in Surprise. I think it's a spring training park. That's perfect size. You'll still be able to attract plenty of teams to get there. Because, look, Dallas is still kind of the hub. DFW, Arlington, is still kind of the hub of the Big 12. And look what the draw is for you now. So you know what? You're not drawing fans anyway. Arizona is going to be a great spot for it. I just think Globe Life Field stinks, man. And I know I got a lot of Rangers fans here. It's nothing personal. I think it's going to be great that they're going to. I've settled on it's going to be great that they're playing it in Arizona, because initially I didn't like it. Only two teams out there. It's like Kansas City for basketball, but I just think venue-wise, it's going to be so much better. But anyway, Baylor season's over. They should have had that one. It was a successful season. They got to the Big 12 tournament, which they hadn't done in 3 years. They didn't get swept all year, which is something of an accomplishment based on what we've seen the last few seasons. But certainly it could have been better. They showed some flashes, and I expect them to take more steps next year. I know you want to have Gabe Craig and a couple other guys, but if this is going to continue on the path that it's going, the ascension that Baylor baseball is having, albeit, a bit slow because that's what college baseball is, then that team next year needs to be in the hunt for this postseason. In fact, I would say, based off the ascension we've seen so far, Baylor baseball needs to be in the field next year, in the NCAA tournament again for the first time since 2019. Is that right? Did they just miss in 21? I think I might be right in saying that. I think they were the first team that missed. So they need to get back there. They need to get back there after and that's a compliment after what we saw this year. But it just sucks that they got absolutely hosed in this game by that one umpire call that I don't want to say the floodgates open up, but it ends up becoming the winning run. The guy ahead of him who was already on base, who would have been eliminated with the next out, becomes the game-winning run. And that sucks. Anyway, let me know what you think down in the comments section below. Was this season a success or a failure for Baylor baseball and for Mitch Thompson? Let me know in the comments section. Be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel. Appreciate you guys making it your first listen today and every day. We'll be back with you tomorrow on a Friday edition of your favorite show, Locked On Baylor.